Hi, good afternoon. Today I'm going to be presenting Niger, country at a glance. So for starters, here's my index. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the geography and demography of the country. Then I'm going to mention some things about its history, starting from the point where they were colonized in the 19th century, all the way till 2015. Then I'm going to mention some facts about its economy. Then I'm going to explain to you a little bit about the politics of Niger. And lastly, I'm going to mention some relevant cultural aspects. So first, as I said, I'm going to be talking about the geography and demographics of the country. This country is located in the West Africa region. Its capital is Niamey, and it borders the country with 7 other countries, which are Algeria, Benin, Burkina Faso, Chad, Libya, Mali, and Nigeria. Its official language is French, and the total population as of today is of 25.9 million people. There are also 7 main ethnic groups living in Niger, and the official religion is Islam, with 99.3% of the people belonging to this religion. Then a little bit about the history of the country. As I said, first they were colonized by the French in 1890. And later on in 1958, they became like a protectorate of France. And it was not until 1960 where Niger became independent. Then some years later, after they established their first official government, in 1974, there was a military coup led by Conche, which he was a military commander. Then in 1990, opposition's party became legal. It was the first time this happened since Niger became independent. So it was a really important fact for the politics of the country. Then in that same year, the first Tuareg rebellion began. The Tuareg are an ethnic group living in Niger, and this was their first rebellion. Then in 1995, there was a ceasefire agreement between the Tuareg people and the government of Niger. But 1 year later, there was another conflict, which was started by the coup led by Maina Sara. Then at the beginning of the next century, in 2003, there was claims from the United States, and they were basically claiming that Niger was trying to sell uranium to Iran, which was against the nuclear agreements. And it was a really dangerous situation, that the United States perceived as that. Then in 2007, there was yet another Tuareg rebellion, and this time the hostilities only lasted for 2 years, and they ended with peace talks with the government again. Then again, 1 year later, there was yet another coup, which led to multiple internal conflicts, insecurity. So in that same year, the African Union decided to suspend the membership of Niger due to these problems. And also due to these problems in 2012, there was a big migration crisis. Thousands of people were trying to escape the conflict and the insecurity in Niger, and they were mainly migrating to Mali, sorry. And yeah, it was a really big crisis due to the amount of people that wanted to enter and wanted to pass the borders. Then in 2015, there was an agreement to contribute to a regional force to fight the Boko Haram militants. Then a little bit about the economy of the country. Its official currency is the West African CFA franc. Niger is not the only country that has this this currency. It works more or less as the euro for like most West African countries, as the name says. Then 1,000 francs is more or less equivalent till this day to 1.60 US dollars, which it proves a big difference in the economy. Then the economy of Niger is mainly based on its internal market, agriculture, and the exchange and export of raw commodities. And last but not least, the GDP per capita is of 5,600 US dollars. So a little bit about the politics. Niger is a semi-presidential republic, and semi-presidential basically means that the president and the prime minister are both in charge of the executive power. And this was decided after the Third Republic, where they implemented this in the constitution in 1992. So nowadays, the president is Mohamed Bazoum. He was elected in April of 2021. And he belongs to the Party for Democracy and Socialism. And he's only allowed to run according to the constitution of the Third Republic for only 5 years. Then the prime minister is Ohomodo Mahamudu. He was elected on April of 2021 as well. He was elected actually on the 3rd of April of 2021, and the president was elected on the 2nd of April of 2021. And this is due to the fact that the prime minister is not elected by elections like the president is, but the prime minister is elected by the president. So that's why it's considered that he was elected one day after the president was elected. And he also belongs to the Party for Democracy and Socialism. Then we have the National Assembly, which is made by 113 members, and they also run for 5-year terms. And they're mainly in charge of passing the decisions that come from the executive power. So according to Freedom House, Niger is partly free. In 2020, they got 20 out of 40 in political rights, and in civil liberties, they got 28 out of 60, which is it's not that bad considering all things considered. And last but not least, I wanted to mention some cultural aspects of the country. First, I wanted to recommend to you the poet Adamo Ide. He's a really great poet out of Niger. Mostly of his poems are written in French, but I think you can easily find his poems translated on the internet. And then I wanted to recommend to you also the documentary Anger in the Wind. It's also made by a director from Niger, and it follows the life of like someone living in the country, which I think it's a really interesting thing to see, and it's a really short documentary, so I really recommend it to you as well. And lastly, for conclusion, I mainly wanted to say that although Niger has been through a lot, as we saw with the history, a lot of problems, a lot of conflicts, a lot of coups with rebellions and stuff like that. Nowadays, they're not doing bad. The economy is not doing as well as other African countries, but regarding the civil liberties, it's not as bad as other African countries. And it's a country that has a lot to offer. It's a really beautiful country. And a fun fact, the biggest river in the country, it's called the Niger River. And it's extremely beautiful. It's clear, the water is clearer than the Nile. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting fact to put out there to conclude my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.